Awesome. Welcome everyone to How to Build a Digital Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit. My name is Katie Bouet, and we are here with my colleague Vivian Wang, and we are super excited to talk to you all today about how you can create a grassroots campaign, and work you through the whole thing. We have a worksheet. If you are able to, I'll drop the link here in the chat. There's just a link to the worksheet. If anyone doesn't have it, I encourage you to open this up, and you can keep it for later, use it now. And Vivian, let's dive in. I'll pass it over to you.
All right. First things first, let's talk a bit about the Outdoor Advocacy Project. Do you want to take this, Katie?
Yeah. So we are part of the Outdoor Advocacy Project, which is an organization that I started about 2 years ago now, with the intention of creating a space for the outdoor, what the industry calls the consumer, but what is really the community and the people. There wasn't a great body that represented the people. There's a lot of representation of the industry, and we wanted a way to connect with the community and connect with outdoorists, because I really believe that folks have a responsibility to take care of the outdoors, to give back to these places that we recreate on and that we love so much. And the Outdoor Advocacy Project is a space to facilitate that. We want to take big, complex outdoor issues and ideas and urgent things that are on the table and turn them into accessible education, understandable, digestible information, and most importantly, action items that folks can use to take part and live up to our responsibility to take care of these places. Some of the projects that we worked on here that I think are relevant to this conversation to, prove our credibility here. Last year, we worked on a project challenging an oil and gas leasing sale in the Moab, Utah area. And we gathered 36,000 signatures, and the lease sale was actually canceled in the aftermath of the huge outpouring of public comment that was generated. We just wrapped up a National Monuments storytelling project supporting the Antiquities Act that involved video, photo, interviews, newsletters, a whole breadth of content. Our first event ever was the climate rally in 2020 at Outdoor Retailer, which had about 300 to 400 attendees who came out and marched with us in Denver, Colorado. And then My Pride and Joy, the Recreate Responsibly campaign that we run the social media strategy for. And in our first year of existence, pretty much entirely through organic social media, we reached 3.2 billion impressions. So, I think sometimes we all have these moments where like, is social media really working? Does it actually do anything? And I think, my friends, that the answer is yes. And today we really want to help you figure out how you can use all the different tools that exist in the digital space to create a campaign or a movement that can help you, affect change on an issue that you care about.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of like who's behind the Outdoor Advocacy Project. So we have Katie, and then we also have Amelia, who also co-founded with Katie and is our policy advisor. And then I hopped onto the team last year because I really believed in OAP's mission, and gave myself the title, the community marketing strategist. And then we also have Savannah, who's our climate scientist. So it's for ladies just tackling OAP behind the scenes. And so like what Katie said earlier, if you would like to either just listen throughout this whole workshop, feel free to do that, or you can work on it as we're going through these different steps on the worksheet. One thing that we really want to remind folks is just keep it simple, keep it you. I think it can be very easy to overcomplicate some of these different steps and pointers that we're going to be talking about. So I think just stay true to you and what you're passionate about. And we're going to probably keep repeating this as we're going through each step, but keep it simple and do you.
Yeah, I will be offering a lot of examples and different platforms and tactics that you can use. If you look at the worksheet, there are some checklists that may seem a little bit intimidating, but think of it as a buffet. You don't have to eat everything at the buffet. You can just make a plate of whatever sounds good to you and whatever sounds like it's going to work in this moment. We just wanted to offer as many resources and options as possible, because that's what's kind of fun about creating a digital advocacy campaign, is there are so many different possibilities and different formulas and all the different pieces you can put together to create these unique puzzles for the different issues, because everything is so unique. And the idea of advocacy spans such a huge field of topics. So take what you want from this, leave what you don't, and we hope that it is just beneficial to you overall. And for the worksheet, it may be helpful. What you want to do is open it up and you'll make a copy. And when you make a copy and save that to your own drive, you'll be able to type in it, change whatever you want, delete sections, do whatever you want with the worksheet to make it your own.
Yeah, absolutely. The worksheet's just a guide. And so, you don't have to follow everything, but it's just there to kind of just help you along as you create your advocacy campaign.
Yeah, let's dig in, Vivian.
Let's get started. So step one, we need to first identify our issues and our topic. There's so many different issues out there. We really want to kind of narrow that down because unfortunately we can't tackle all of them. And so some of the questions, you want to ask yourself as you're starting to brainstorm is, what are my passions? What advocacy issues are affecting my passions? What do I care about the most? And why do I care about this issue? And so great time to kind of reflect and narrow down what you're passionate about. And this will help really kickstart, this campaign that you want to build and really move that issue forward.
Yeah, I think there's, you may have a topic in mind. There may be something very specifically that's been impacting your community or impacting a place you like to recreate, or it's a sport or activity specific issue. Or you may just know that you have like a lot of energy and you want to put it somewhere, and that is awesome. And there is so much work to be done in the advocacy space. And there is always so much, many hands make a lighter lift, and the more hands we have on issues, the better. So explore whatever feels good and pick an issue that you feel energized by, because you are really going to need to be able to sustain that energy. And advocacy work, like, it takes a lot out of you and it's very exhausting, and you give so much of your heart and soul. So really think, thoughtfully about like where you want to give and what issue you could give to that could potentially also end up filling you back up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you figure out and identify an issue that you want to advocate for, step two is just research and information gathering. So I guess questions you want to ask yourself is like, what are the key messaging points that you want to tackle? What organizations are involved with this already? Let's not duplicate the work. Who is already doing the work and how can you contribute something new or helpful? What are the data points and the facts? Making sure that you fact check and cite your sources, that's really important. And also, who is like your audience? Who are the community members to activate? Who are the lawmakers and the decision makers that need to be affected? And what is the call to action? And so I think this will help really lay out and narrow down how to execute this further. Katie,
yeah, I think
go ahead.
It really becomes like an outline, an initial outline of the issue. Like what is happening here? Why is this happening? What are the threats? What's at stake here? And I think the key really for any advocacy campaign is that last bullet there, is the call to action. What is the point is really what that means.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not familiar with the term call to action, it's basically like, what are we asking people to do here? So for instance, with our Moab oil and gas leasing campaign, the call to action was sign the petition to ask the Secretary of Interior to cancel this lease sale. So just a specific one ask what you're trying to do. And there are a lot of topics that could have 1,000 different calls to action. And it's really critical to make sure that you hone in on one thing to ask people to do. In this era of low attention spans and, such busy brains and schedules, focusing really will help you create a bigger impact.
Yeah, really reiterating what we're saying, keep it simple, pretty much throughout this whole thing. And then now it's time to make a plan. And so thinking about like, what are your different tactics, when it comes to now the different digital platforms and media, what is the most effective? Is a video more effective? A blog post, a newsletter, an op-ed? And then narrowing down even further when it comes to the social media, like which platform like should you use? Because each platform has different uses for depending on like what the issue is. What type of messaging, what are your graphics going to look like? What are the resources that you need? How do you measure the success of the campaign? I think it's really important because that can tell you if the campaign was successful or not. And then the next would be like, what is like outlining the campaign schedule? So what are the key deadlines? If there are comment periods, town hall events, voting deadlines, registration, how long do you want the campaign to be? So a lot of balancing, a lot of the timing, the urgency, if there are really tight turnaround times in the campaign that you're doing, the flow of the content. So maybe building, teasers, building up to kind of this like grand launch could be really helpful and kind of engaging folks with this campaign. And following up and making sure that you think, the lawmakers I maybe talked with, the community members, the analytics and impact, which, is later down the line.
Yeah, I think too, with this idea of the campaign schedule, there's a lot of detail to be paid attention to and some balances to be struck, because when you're working on an advocacy campaign, everything comes back to this call to action, and everything comes back to this idea of how are we going to inspire people to absorb this information, want to get involved, and then take whatever that specific action is. And you really have to straddle this line of a sense of urgency and timing. So you want to give people enough time to build awareness on the issue, to get activated around the issue, and then to feel compelled to take the action. But you also don't want to leave too much time, because it's 2021 and we are procrastinators. And if you give folks too much of a window, there's no urgency to get the call to action done. There's no urgency behind the issue. But if you give them only, 24 hours to get something done, you're probably going to skirt out a lot of people who just don't have enough time to get onboarded or don't have enough time to become aware of the issue to begin with. So really trying to figure out what those days are and what those deadlines are. And often for a lot of these issues, that'll be baked in the form of these comment periods, town hall events, or deadlines. So really focus in on those dates and let them guide how you formulate this plan.
Yeah. And I feel like when it comes to making like this plan, it's very important to really like stay organized, double check everything. And again, keep it simple. Because I don't know, I can see like during this step, you're just trying to plan all these different things and it can get really hectic. So like what Katie said, narrowing down to the point of like, what is the call to action? What do we want people to do at the end of this campaign? It's really important.
Yeah. And I love that idea of keeping it organized too, Vivian. I think that's so true. And Vivian, I can say we have learned the hard way on this one many times. But something that might be helpful is I like to do a big brain dump and information gathering. So I'll just create a Google Doc and I'll go and find the answers to all of these questions, like the different dates, the different resources, the links I need, who's involved, all of these questions that we have that we've been asking ourselves, just dump it all into one big, ugly, messy document, and then go back and create a sister document where you clean everything up. So I like to do things in layers, like create a big mess and then we clean it up a little bit. So, I mean, it could work the opposite for you, but whatever kind of works. I like to throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and then start cleaning up my kitchen.
I love that. Great analogy. So these are some of the examples of some of the platforms that you may use depending on your call to action and campaign. Katie, do you want to dive deep into like each of these?
Do I ever? So these are just a few of the examples of the digital tactics that we laid out. If you look on the worksheet, it has a long list. There's a 2-columned checklist that you can use. And I love that feature. If you actually press the button, it checks it off, which I think is super fun and cute. But so, one of the most old school social media platforms, the original one that many of us may not think to use anymore, but is still very valuable, is Facebook. And I am aggressively anti-Facebook in most situations. However, Facebook has 2 really great tools that can be used for digital organizing, which are events and groups. I love events as a landing page, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here. But events basically can be used as like a website. It's a moment in time. It's a digital flyer that you can create. It's really easy to share. It's easy for people to click, yes, I'm going, and then continue to get notifications about it. It has so many different features that can be helpful, including like a discussion box. So you have a place where people can gather and have conversation. You have a space where you can provide information about what's going on. So Facebook, I always forget about it. And then I'm always like, oh, that's right. It's such a good platform for this specific use.
Yeah. Just want to add on, like, it's a great, like, all in one place, kind of what you were saying, Katie. Like, you have the information and folks, I guess that communal aspect of people chatting back and forth on that. I was also going to say something else and then I forgot, but continue.
Yeah. If you remember, we want to hear it. And then, so sister to Facebook is Instagram, of course. Instagram is such a powerful storytelling platform. It is incredibly crucial to make issues personal, to bring them to life, to give people something to connect with. Me saying like, hey guys, drilling in Moab is bad. Like, yeah, I kind of get that. But if I show the visuals of what the landscapes look like now, and the thought of like, this may not be here forever if we allow oil and gas development in this area, is really compelling. And it helps people feel a personal connection to place. And when people feel personally connected to an issue is when they are compelled to take action on that issue. So for our monument storytelling project that we've been working on, we did an infographic series because I love them and I hate them. Infographics are effective. They help spread information. They should never be your end all be all for education and resources, but they are a great starting point. And when you couple them with really visual storytelling, they kind of put all these pieces together in this really nice ecosystem of content. We also did some Instagram lives with Chairman Grijalva of the House Natural Resources Committee in Congress. We got some on the ground storytelling. We took portraits of folks. So it creates this like beautiful story that gives people the personal reason to get involved with an issue.
And very like visually compelling too.
Yeah, and like super shareable. Everyone's on Instagram. And I think that's a good thing and a bad thing, but it's the reality is that we're all on Instagram, and it's a must use platform, in my opinion, in this day and age. And then Google Drive is my favorite of all the tactics. Google Drive is where my toolkits live. It's where all my documents live. And I think that every campaign should have a folder on Google Drive where everything lives. And you can have a folder for your toolkit, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But it's also where you can use, forms for collecting people's information and their contacts. You can create surveys. You can make spreadsheets to track any spending that's going on. If you're making swag, if you have like paid advertising that's going on, if you have some sort of budget or people are giving money, you need to keep track of that. Spreadsheets are also really great for keeping people's contact information, for organizing schedules of, content to go out. And it's also great for keeping people's roles and assignments kind of buttoned up, which is something we'll talk about as well. And then this last one is something that I want to touch on as well, which is a sign-on letter. So a sign-on letter or a petition, just somewhere for people to put their name to the cause, that then can be used to reach out to lawmakers, to deliver to land agencies or whatever kind of the powers that be are affecting your topic. So for the Moab oil and gas leasing project, we actually did a pairing of sign-ons. The first was a sign-on letter that was specifically targeted to businesses. So we had local businesses in Moab. So this is like a local voice, an economic driver, and they all signed on to this letter expressing what a bad idea it was to lease this land. And then paired with that, we also offered a broader sign-on letter for the public. So that was for anyone living anywhere, any taxpayer who feels that they are affected by this issue and want to have an input on the public lands being impacted by this lease sale, we're able to sign that. And that's where we got those 36,000 signatures. So you have this double whammy of local community voices, front line on the issue, very specific, very hard to dismiss, right? And then you have this other side where you have like the sheer volume of people getting involved and the public input and the public outcry. And when you bring the two of those together, it really becomes a much more powerful tool. And sign-on letters are a lot easier to create than they may seem. You just need someone to draft up the letter. You need to come up, identify the issue, identify the outcomes and solutions that you want to see and the steps you want to see taken, close it up with a respectful ending, get everyone's contact information, and figure out who you need to deliver it to make that impact that you're trying to have.
Yeah, I think you have examples. The next slide. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this example, and don't get too overwhelmed by this example. It's also linked to in the worksheet. If you go down to the third page at the header that says Social Media Toolkit and Drive, you'll see a little note that says see the 2021 Recreate Responsibly Toolkit. And you are all welcome to open that up and check it out. It's what we developed for the relaunch of the Recreate Responsibly guidelines. And this is basically the hub where all the information lives. So if someone pops up and is like, hey, I want to get involved, I want to share this, what's going on, you have one document where all that information is so that anyone can onboard themselves at their own pace. Any supporting organizations who want to get involved can send this to their communications teams. Any lawmakers or decision makers who might want to get involved can send this to their aides and their teams. So making something that people can use. This is meant for people to take and use. And you want to start with, the top line issue, what's going on, what the messaging is. You want to include any hashtags that are involved. You want to include any big dates or deadlines. So this is like very much the most buttoned up version of that brain dump that I talked about earlier. And you'll also include a key element here for the toolkits is suggested messaging and language. So for this specific one, and for a lot of them, I build out different social messaging for the different platforms that I want to see used, because often there are different messages to go out on different platforms. But with the character counts alone, I'm not going to make the same caption for Instagram that I would for Twitter. So having different messages, different options, things that people can pick and pull based on like what's going to work for themselves, like for their own platforms and how they want to share. And then always include some contact information there as well so that people can reach out if they want to get more involved or have questions, or want to collaborate or anything like that. And you can see at the top there, that's just a screenshot of like what the drive looks like. Very simple. It's just a folder where all the graphics live, and it's a document where all the information lives.
Yeah.
And then this is a visual of the some of the assets that we created from the Moab oil and gas leasing project. And the first set here on the left, that's the lighter orange, that was kind of our informational and onboarding moment. So that just had the information like what the issue is, what's going on, why it's bad, what we can do about it. And then in the middle there, you'll see the body of the letter that we wrote to the Secretary of the Interior at that time, Secretary Bernhardt. And on the left, you'll see a graphic that we created in the midst of this campaign. So the lighter orange one, we proactively created ahead of time. We knew what we wanted to say. We wanted to get this information out. And then on the right are the graphics that we created after a media opportunity presented itself once we had already launched. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but I do want to explain this one. So an article came out while we were running this campaign. And I think it was called A Guy Named Craig Will Soon Have Control Over a Large Swath of Land in Utah. And it was kind of funny, like a guy, like who's this guy named Craig? And it kind of became this like funny chatter moment in the outdoor scene. And we were listening to that moment and said, oh, this guy like Craig is a character and we can kind of roll with that. So we created a little graphic series that was basically like an open letter to Craig. And we said, hey, Craig, please keep your hands off our public lands. Got a little tongue in cheek, a little funny, like a little kind of culture moment. And oddly enough, we were also able to get, we partnered with Public Land Solutions for this project, and they were able to get on the phone with Craig and had a direct conversation with Craig that ended up affecting this entire campaign and this entire movement, because basically we were able to get on the phone with Craig and say, hey man, we're going to make this not worth your while. Like, you see how loud we're being on social media right now? We will continue to be that loud and obnoxious about this issue until you give it up. So why don't you just give it up now? And ultimately, Craig said, I'm out. This isn't it for me. You guys caused too much of a ruckus. I don't want anything to do with this lease sale anymore. So those cultural moments can be really, really key. And we'll talk about that later as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Katie, you touched upon a lot of pretty much leading to the step 4, assembling your toolkit. So we've identified our issue for step 1. Step 2 is where you did your research. Step 3, make a plan. Now it's time to assemble and kind of have that one-stop shop where, like what Katie was saying, that if someone wanted to help execute this campaign, you can share this like Google Drive or whatever folder you have and have everything out there. And so as you're assembling your toolbox, you know, you got to think about how you want to brand it. And so naming your campaign, any some type of like catchy phrases, any puns, kind of what Katie was saying, a little tongue in cheek, if you would like, thinking about the color schemes, the fonts, but not getting too crazy with it. We recommend like maybe 2 different fonts and some type of template. Then think about your social media toolkit, which one you want to use to execute it. Think about the messaging, all of the captions in there, the links. Basically, if anyone wanted to post this on there, what do they need to post it there? And so deadlines, Katie mentioned hashtags, you know, the ads, the accounts, and definitely having like the graphics, the photos, any type of media that is associated with the social media. And then having like a contact list, an email list, who should have, you know, who do you want to reach out to? You know, earlier we were talking about like who your audience is, or who are the lawmakers and the community members that you want to activate. And so having an email list of who you want to contact. And then if your campaign allows for in real life assets and collateral, so if you would like any flyers, stickers, lawn sign, any type of sponsored content, any type of like swag opportunities, this is where you would also throw that in there too. Katie, do you want to add anything before I hop on to the next one?
Just for the micro branding, you know, I'm so wary of everything we say. I'm like, okay, how can I reel this in for us? How can I not overwhelm people with this idea? And, you know, this isn't like, you're not like making a whole business. It doesn't have to be the perfect brand. What we honestly like to do, and no disrespect to any real graphic designers in the house, I love you forever. You are the MVPs here of design. We use Canva. We love Canva. Canva if you are not a graphically inclined person, Canva is such an invaluable tool to be able to create something decent. You can hop in there and we'll hop in, we'll do like a 15-20 minute session where we're just kind of like brainstorming. We look through all the templates, we look at the different fonts, we look at different icons, and we think of like, okay, what's going to work for this, what's not. And we kind of make a big mess, and then we make some decisions, because this doesn't need to be perfect. And
Right.
especially for us, we work on so many campaigns that if we spent hours and days branding every individual campaign we did, we would never get to the actual meat of the issue that we're trying to solve. So make quick, hard decisions, trust your gut, and just go for it. And that's that. Get some counsel from friends or other folks on the issue, get their feedback, and then move on and commit to your like quick little design.
Yeah, keep it simple, always reeling it back to that. Other parts of the toolkit to keep in mind, think about a team plan, the contact information for all the organizers, volunteers, the team tasks, having calendar, meeting schedule, the deadlines, all of that, having that in there. So that's the internal. And then now we're going to have the external plan also, like who do we need to be in contact with? Who are the lawmakers that we need to get involved with? Some of these questions you may have already answered when you're making your plan. So who are the local organizations that are doing the work so that you can support and amplify? Who are the impacted community members who are interested but may not be internally involved? And having some type of landing page. So we're talking a little bit like Facebook is great for this, having, if you can have it, having its own website, some dedicated social media account, or like a subsection on a website, just where if folks need to get more information, something that's very easy and shareable, where they can find more of that information.
Yeah, and I think too, this slide is bringing back to me the idea of the team, and making sure that you collect your accomplices, and put a call out to your friends, to your community. If it's a climbing issue, like put up a flyer at your local rock gym and say like, hey, does anyone want to get involved on this issue? Because the work is better when you have multiple hands on it, and it really, like, delegating tasks out, and don't be shy to delegate tasks out. If people offer that they want to support this, I'm going to guess that 99.9% of folks listening on this, and the reasons that you'll use these skills, would be on unpaid advocacy campaigns. So, lean on your friends. If people want to help, like, create those relationships and invite that. And when people offer to do something, like, take them up on it. So for example, I'm thinking of for Hike United, we really needed a landing page somewhere. We needed somewhere for everyone to go to be able to access this information. No one working on Hike United had the time or capacity to make a website. That just was not going to happen. And then one of our colleagues, one of the co-founders from the Outbound, kind of popped in and said, hey, you guys need a website? And we said, absolutely, yes, we do. And we ended up using just a subpage. We went on the In Solidarity Project website. There was just a tab that Teresa added to create like a subsection. And so all you need is just one place on the internet for folks to go. And it can be that event page. It can be just an Instagram account, whatever it works for you to be able to provide all of that information to folks, giving them somewhere to go when they hear about this or they see your hashtag and they're like, hey, I want to learn more.
Mm-hmm. So these are some examples. Yeah.
So this is for the climate rally in 2020, pre-pandemic. Remember when we would all gather in person in large crowds? Scary. And so this was, very simple. This was the only landing page that we had. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a dedicated social media account, nothing like that. This was it. And so I created the flyer on the right using Canva. And we just built out this event page that provided all the information: who, what, when, where, why. It laid out the schedule. So you can see in the center here, it provides you this great map tool. And it also provides a schedule event. So, if you're issue isn't tied to a specific place. You don't need to use that location stuff, but you can still use this event page as your landing source. So, this specifically was a moment in time, so it makes a lot of sense as an event page. But you can also tailor event pages for kind of anything that has a deadline associated with it. So you can set the time of the event to be at like what the deadline is for the comment period, or you can set the time to be, the arbitrary date that you set for the cutoff for your sign-on letter, or whatever it is. You can kind of get creative with it. And I think in this evolving landscape where events are hybrid or totally virtual these days, you can get a little creative and use these in different ways than we had in the past.
Yeah. And kind of wrapping up the step 4 of our tool kit, having like, how do folks get involved? So having that sign up destination where, if you have that website, maybe that's where they can find all that information, or any type of landing page of how they can get involved. Definitely having some type of analytic software tracking tool. So that can be one of the ways to measure the success of your campaign. Using like Hootsuite, in-app analytics, or Keyhole. I'm familiar with Keyhole, but I'm familiar with Hootsuite. So it's a great like scheduling and like tracking platform. And community maps, very important. Just a great community maps, just basically a centralized visual like web that basically shows like who is doing what and who is the point of contact. If for certain questions, like if some like media thing pops up, or just basically if anyone has any questions about certain things, who should they go to? And I think this is very important to like stay organized internally. So if anything were to come up, and when you're executing this could help kind of streamline like that process. When things can get pretty chaotic when you start actually launching it, because things never go according to plan. And so having that point person for certain things will be really helpful. So definitely something to keep in mind as you're assembling all of this, is that if something were to go on wrong, like who can we come to for that role?
Yeah. And I think this community map idea is one that every time I'm building one out, I'm like, are we really going to use this? Like, what is actually the purpose of this? And then anytime that I do a campaign where I don't have that community map laid out, I am so full of regret that I didn't take the extra 5 minutes to just write out who is in charge of what and what are they doing, especially if you have a lot of moving parts and maybe not everyone is meeting on centralized, like, if you have everyone in the same room at the same time, it's a little bit easier. But if you have multiple lines of communication and you're kind of ping-ponging on who is talking to who to keep everyone updated, it's really nice to have things laid out in one place. And I know I've already sung the praises of the checkbox feature under bullets for Google Docs, but I can't recommend that enough for laying out like a list of, who the person is, what their role is, what their contact is, and then beneath that, their tick list of like what their outstanding action items are. Because especially as you get like really energized on an issue and like ideas start bouncing back and forth and people are talking and people are getting really fired up and like thinking of great things, you're often spitting out all these different assignments and like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll take that on. And then the next day after the meeting, no one really remembers anything besides that feeling of the stoke. And like, we haven't retained who is supposed to do what. So having a person also in charge of that community map is really helpful. And it can be simple. It doesn't need to be this like beautiful map visual. It can just be a list on a Google Doc, but having that laid out is so critical to, keeping all the balls in the air.
Yeah. Staying organized and keeping it simple.
It's a theme. We have a theme here.
Yeah. The day has come. Step 5, executing the plan. And so making sure that you have scheduled all of your content depending on which scheduling platform and social media that is going to go up, activating your team, your stakeholders, the community members that are all involved, and just making sure that everyone has like the key moments and dates, and sending communication ahead of time so folks are prepared for all of this. And I think what's really important that I feel like sometimes like happens is make sure people have access to like the tool kit. Like there are definitely times when folks have shared things with me and I'm just like, I need to request access. And if that person is available, it's like, oh gosh, what to do then. And then once it's launched, it's out there, it's on all of these different media platforms, time to really listen and engage with the community that are out there. So having someone keep an eye on like the hashtags in the comment section. I think what's really helpful is preparing like an FAQ document. So when all of these different questions that may challenge your issue, you will have all of that ready. So thinking more proactive than reactive communication, I think is very important, especially in the digital space. And making sure that you're amplifying, folks that are sharing your message, the different community postings. And I love how you worded this, Katie, giving flowers to the stakeholders, like who are engaged. So yeah, just kind of like being involved and like while seeing how everything unfold, also being prepared for it, I think will be very helpful in certain critical times.
Yeah, and this FAQ response document is something that we've adopted and kind of insist on for all of our clients and all of our consulting work that we do now, because on social media, in anything that is political, no matter the topic, you are likely to encounter some both well-intentioned and good-natured, and also some just kind of like harmful and trolling commentary. And what is inevitable is that when you have put your heart and soul into an issue and to putting something out there, regardless of whether someone is coming to you with like a genuine, in respect criticism, or if someone's coming to you like with just like total abuse, you're going to take it personally. And that's just like human nature. You worked really hard on something, and in that moment when you receive that negative feedback, it can feel very personal and can really bring up some fragility quickly. And it's hard to reel yourself in and be able to respond to some of those comments in a thoughtful, productive way once you've kind of already escalated to that point of like taking a little bit personally. So we really love to have these FAQ response documents where we sit down and think like, okay, what are the challenges here? What are the counterpoints? What are like the typical things that someone could say kind of against whatever we're saying here? Who are the opponents and what are their key points? And coming up with a response that allows you to have like something baked so that you can just like hand that out when someone comes to you, so that you're able to think thoughtfully, proactively. And we love to write them in a formula that is like, you need to acknowledge this person. And you don't need to respond to every single comment. Sometimes there are comments that are just absolutely trolling. You can tell if it's a fake account. I always tell people, if they have 0 posts, 0 followers, like save your energy for the cause that you are actually trying to impact. But if it's someone who like really truly wants to have a conversation, acknowledge that they're spending their time and energy talking to you, acknowledge their perspective, offer your thoughts back, and then close it up with appreciation for the dialogue. And I think that when you kind of have that language prepared, you're better able to serve that up and kind of remove your ego from the moment. And you're like, oh God, they're right. We were wrong about this issue. So just, really, really be proactive. That's, I think, one of the most important, besides keep it simple and keep it organized, is be proactive instead of reactive whenever you can. Because the nature of this campaign that you're building is likely inherently reactive to begin with. You are reacting to an issue. Something bad is happening and you want to stop it. Or something good is coming down the line and you really want to make sure that it happens. You are reacting to that. So anytime you can implement proactive planning in your strategy around this, you're kind of setting yourself up to like save energy later. And you're setting yourself up to be able to sustain this work for longer and put your energy into the more productive and impactful parts of this.
Yeah, I love that, Katie. Great reminder. And I mean, I think that leads to kind of like towards the end of step 5. So while you've like executed and like the launch of your campaign is out there, definitely looking for different opportunities that you can amplify. and having a designated spokesperson would be very helpful for that and seeking those different opportunities. But I think most important is this last point of just breathing. Like, you've done all this work, you've led up to this moment, it's like out there now, you've prepared, put all this time, energy into it. So I think what Katie was saying before, it's like, yeah, you want to make this definitely sustainable for yourself and your team that has been involved in this. So definitely, once you hit that send button, take a deep breath, drink some water, go outside for a walk. Like, you've done like the work, and you should be very proud of that and kind of give yourself like that grace. Because yeah, usually these advocacy issues are very passionate about, and I think it's very important that you yourself and your team can recharge like from this. And so yeah, breathe. I think is very important, and a reminder that we always need to keep in mind.
I got nothing to add.
Great.
Go drink some water and take a deep breath.
Yeah. And after that, after you're done with this campaign, you've taken the necessary rest for it. Now it's come back to kind of to look at your impact and following up on this. So asking your questions, what went well, what didn't work, what can you change in the future to improve the campaign. Looking at the analytics, the number of posts using the hashtags, clicks on the website. If you're using Bitly, they have also different types of tracking methods too, and making sure you show appreciation for your team. Thank yous to the stakeholders, the lawmakers who are engaged, and leaving on a positive note, and all the work that you've done. And again, just making sure that you breathe. I love this. Take a nap, refill your cup. You deserve it. And yeah, giving yourself this grace. I feel like we can all it's very easy to get very critical. And especially if a campaign wasn't maybe as successful as that you thought or that you expected. Understanding that still a lot of work went into this, and that it's just more something that you can take as more of a positive, and how you can improve it in the future.
Yeah, sometimes we are just planting seeds and we don't see, the harvest for a long time. Yeah, and I think, this last step, kind of the wrap up and the post campaign, are really easy to completely just blow by as you move on to the next issue and the next thing pops up. But I think that it's really important to bring your campaign full circle, for yourself and for everyone else who's involved in it. You don't want to create a big campaign where you collect all these signatures, you get everyone riled up, everyone is super stoked and involved and wants to be activated, and then the comment period deadline passes, and then that's it.
What now?
What now? So yeah. It's really important to always provide that follow-up. So if you've been collecting an email list, or if you have an Instagram that you started and you have followers on it now, or kind of whatever the case is, making sure that you provide that wrap up. You capture all those analytics for yourself, of course, for measuring the success, but also provide that when you can. For the Moab Oil and Gas Leasing project, we collected all these signatures, which was great. We sent them in, which was great. But people really felt so inspired to hear that they were one of 36,000 people who signed this. So it creates a sense of fulfillment for the folks who joined your cause and who came on board with you. And I think the thorns and roses part is really critical for you and your team and the people who've been supporting you on this and working on this. Giving people an opportunity to express what went well, what didn't work for them, is just a really critical part of kind of strengthening that team. Because maybe through the process of this, you found some colleagues who, create a great ecosystem of skills and assets and energy that you want to keep going. So always wrapping it up and always showing that appreciation to the stakeholders and the lawmakers. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
We don't say thank you to lawmakers very often.
Yeah.
We very, very often are like, hey, this is a problem and you need to do something about it right now.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they fix it and we're like, all right, bye, we're on to the next thing. Right. So I think, building those relationships and saying those thank yous are investments in your future advocacy work as well. So when I'm working on a Moab issue and I say thank you to a lawmaker in Moab on that issue, I am building that relationship so that the next time an issue comes up, I now know that I have a lawmaker down in Moab that I can call on to help support whatever advocacy I'm working on. So like always be, wrapping things up and investing in what could come next.
Mm-hmm.
And then go take a nap.
Yeah.
And then this year, this is Keyhole, Vivian. This is the analytics platform that I find to be the best for hashtag tracking. If you have access to money, it's really great. It's kind of expensive. Otherwise, a lot of these tools that we've talked about are things that have like free 2-week trials. And you can really milk a lot out of a free 2-week trial. If you know you have like a 2-week window leading up to a public comment period, you start your free trial those 2 weeks right before, and then you're able to kind of use some like guerrilla marketing to capture that and use those platforms without investing too much. But this is such a great tool if you are able to get access to using it. It provides all of the information about, this was the example for Recreate Responsibly. So you can see in I believe this was a 2-week period or 3-week period, we reached 4.9 million people, generated 11 million impressions. We had over 3,000 posts by 700 users. So those are really great numbers to be able to pull up and pop in. And I think we just lost Vivian, but we're going to soldier on. The last slide that we had up here was just saying, it was a very cute picture of Vivian hugging a tree and me looking at my shoes at Cracker Lake in Glacier National Park. And it was just to ask us anything. So I know we have one question here in the comment box. If you have any other questions that I can answer for you, I am happy to just pop them in the chat there and I'll get to them. This first question we had from Susanna is, what are your thoughts around TikTok for reaching a younger audience? Oh, Susanna, my thoughts are, I love TikTok. I think that TikTok is a really cool platform. I think that it is an incredible opportunity for reaching the younger generation specifically. And also, I think they call us geriatric millennials now, older millennials who wish that we were still cool and had dance moves. And there are ways to use TikTok that don't require learning any moves or whatever. You can use, especially in the outdoor space, which I think, most of us are thinking of issues in the outdoor realm. You can use just like beautiful outdoor imagery with text overlaid and a voiceover. There's some really great work that's being done in those ways. So you can get creative in the outdoor space without having to get too hip, because I think for a lot of us that ship has sailed. And if you have access to a young person who might be interested in using TikTok, if you have like a niece or nephew that can help tap into that, because TikTok is a really, really critical platform for reaching that younger audience. And I think right now, those younger folks are truly the ones who are going to be leading the next, generation, the next era of advocacy work. And we need to be inviting them back in. Hey, Vivian, you're back. We're just wrapping up now with questions. We just had the one question about our thoughts on TikTok. I just shared my thoughts on TikTok, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on TikTok.
I don't remember your thoughts on it, but I don't really use like TikTok that often, but I see it as an important tool to engage with a lot of, I guess the younger generation, because I don't know. I've seen a lot of videos. I think it's a great way to really capture people's like attention. And if you have like these quick, snappy like points to get folks involved, where I don't know, I can kind of see like a video where it's like, there's this issue. This is what's going on. go to this website, or like these are all the different points. And I just like, yeah. So I think if you are creative and have like the time and energy to create those really snappy like videos, I think it's a great tool to use. I don't know, is that something, did you say something similar? I'm not sure.
No, that was great. Yours was a little bit
Yeah.
more scathing on TikTok than mine. Mine was like, you should use it if you can, but I think yours was definitely more real. And I think a great closing thought here that you sparked for me is that idea of like, if you have the time and energy for it, go for it. And I
Yeah.
think that in this broader idea of creating a campaign, you know, you are building a whole ecosystem of communications tools here. And throughout the entire process, like, be mindful of your capacity, of where your skills are, what you have time for, what you absolutely don't have time for, and be real about that, respect that, honor that for yourself, and keep yourself sustainable. Because if you spend, 6 hours trying to figure out how to make a TikTok, you're going to end up like not making the TikTok at all, and then you're just really tired and you've spent your entire day on that, and now you're drained, where you could have spent those 6 hours, you're like really great at Twitter and you could have put together some like really cool Twitter threads or hosted a Twitter chat or whatever. So like, do what works for you, use your energy how you can, and always, always, always be thinking about sustaining yourself for the next step. Like, be looking 3 steps ahead and make sure that your cup is going to be full enough to get you there. Because if you spend all your time, trying to figure out a TikTok and then you're exhausted and now you don't want to do this campaign anymore, your impact is a lot less than if you had just stuck to what you're good at, and keep it small. Not every campaign is going to change the world. Not every campaign is going to have a huge like demonstration of success and like a tangible moment of like, yeah, we really did it, but it's still worthwhile. Every campaign matters. Every ounce of energy that you give to advocacy matters and is important and has an impact, even if it's just planting that seed that will eventually grow and become a big bush of advocacy.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on like your issue. Like, does it need this TikTok like platform? And it's like, who are you engaging? I think that's why it's really important when you're like, I think it's part of like the step 3 part, making your plan, is like, what are some of the different digital platforms that will work best for your issue? And so if you find successes in other platforms, then maybe you don't need TikTok. Maybe you can use that energy in other ways than creating like this video. But if you're really good at it, I say go for it.
Just go for it. Do what works. Keep it sustainable. Focus on what's effective, and have fun with it. We have to keep some joy alive in this world. But if anyone has any other questions for us, you can find us online. Sign up for our newsletter. Our email is team@outdooradvocacy.com. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Vivian, for leading this.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming. All right. Toodles.